Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Keerthana,
I'm Rohan.
and this week we're talking about a Pedro Almodovar short called The Strange Way of Life. After 25 years, Silva rides a horse across the desert to visit his friend Sheriff Jake. They celebrate the meeting, but the next morning Jake tells him that the reason for his trip is not to go down the memory lane of their friendship.
So our guest today is Kevin. He's been on the podcast a couple times in the past. I know for the Oscars, predictions, and also recap. I want to say a few others.
Challenges also.
Yes.
I was there for the Challengers episode.
Yeah.
Glad to be back, talking about the strange way of life.
Yeah, and he's always here as our editor and producer, so it's not like... He is a guest, but he's also...
Producer,
What were your general thoughts?
Before getting into the film, I saw that this film was on Netflix. And I remember when it had came out that it was kind of advertised as like Almodovar's Brokeback Mountain. So going into it, I was expecting something that was going to be more along the lines of a romance and not that of a crime drama, which I think is a very different take on Brokeback Mountain. I mean, Brokeback Mountain was originally a short story that was adapted into the feature by Ang Lee. I was curious what you guys thought of it because I do think it's been a while since Brokeback Mountain had first come out.
I remember seeing a lot of hype about it before it was coming out, because most of the cast, Pedro Pascal is huge right now with The Last of Us, The Mandalorian, and obviously his other projects. I think he's cast as
The Internet's Zaddy.
Well, that's
That's
not
his.
yeah, but like
That's his
I think
official title.
he got cast as Mr. Fantastic, also I believe. And of course, Ethan Hawke has been a great actor for many years now. Came out, and I don't remember when it came out.
Just 2023.
Yeah, but I feel like that might have been the festival runs and not the Netflix release.
I believe the Netflix release was this year, and it had a festival release last year, like very early this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I don't know, maybe I had missed whenever they announced that it was going to be a short, because I was always under the impression this was going to be a feature.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's on Netflix, and it's like, oh, 30 minutes only? What?
Last feature was Pain and Glory, but between that, he also did The Human Voice with Tilda Swinton. Very different to this film, which is a Western and also is very, very gay.
I thought it was an okay film. Nothing really stood out to me. I just wish the story was a little more engaging. And I feel like the IMDb logline basically sums up the film. It's fairly predictable. What did you think of the style of the film?
I think of the aspects of this film, I enjoyed the visuals the most. Almodovar always has like really colorful set design and also puts in a lot of thought into the clothes that all of his characters wear. I think that's seen in a lot of his films, and especially in his previous short. I will say compared to others, it is like a little bit drearier. It's also a Western, it makes sense. But that said, I think that the film is lit really well. I like to look at films visually as like, if there were no dialogue, would I be able to understand it? And I think yes. Like I think, especially in the flashback sequence, the colors pop well, and most of the dialogue is unnecessary, and they could have played out that scene in the wine cellar.
I mean, the colors pop because those were the only frames that had color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the style didn't really stand out to me. It kind of looked like, a normal Western movie.
Mm-hmm.
See, I would even like pull out further. I thought it felt like a filter.
It did feel filtered.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, almost like they put a Western patch on it of some sort. I feel like they could have indulged more into the genre if like that's really what they were going for.
Right.
This almost felt like a checkbox for like all the genre tropes, but maybe there was a more creative way to explore them, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
What about the story? What did you guys think?
I think this is where the movie kind of loses me. Well, first of all, I mean, I had mentioned I thought this was going to be a feature, but after watching it, I almost wonder if it should have been a feature. Because I think there is a lot going on, but it happens very quickly There is the whole aspect with the son, which I think in the future you could have explored the did he do it or did he not do it. I think in this it's pretty clear that he did it, even though Pedro Pascal advocates that he doesn't. Just the way that the son was acting in his dialogue, it felt like he did it. There was no real battle for his innocence. There was so much that could have been explored. There could have been more explored with their relationship in the past. But I felt like this movie was trying to cram too much into too little time. And because of that, the little time that they did have, it didn't work for me because I was thinking about all the other stuff that there could have been.
Context, basically, Pedro Pascal plays this character whose son has been accused of a crime, of which Sheriff Jake, who's the other main character, he's like direct, I guess, victim. Well, one of the direct victims of that crime. I thought the story was very flat. It almost felt as if the narrative was asking for more space. Because I think the runtime was like 30 minutes, 31 minutes at most. It did feel constricted, but it also felt like rushed.
Yeah.
Like my big problem with short form content in general is that it feels rushed. Like even in like a feature film, I feel like it's very hard for me to buy that a character arcs within 2 hours, regardless of when they throw up the text saying 20 years later, right? And I think that is enhanced in a short. Personally, when I write shorts, I do my best to keep them within like a very short frame of time, usually a day or a night if I can help it, because I think that just makes it more believable for whatever our mini arcs are for the characters. I think it just brings that out more.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. I thought the story was landing really flat for me. It didn't really start off well, and it kind of didn't get better. I feel that part of it is in their characters and their interactions are not interesting enough to me. I also agree with what you were saying, Rohan. It didn't feel like he was fighting for his son's innocence. It was more just like, it felt like Pascal's character was fighting for him to just leave it alone, which is just so, it's just, if you're in Sheriff Jake's place, no, you're not going to. You can tell that there's a lot of history between these characters, but you can't tell exactly like what this history is. And I feel that that is another big issue, because they have to flash back to show what the history is, and the history to me is just they were a relationship and they hooked up and they had fun, but there wasn't anything nuanced about it. There wasn't anything explored about being gay in the West, being gay and in a interracial relationship in the West. There's a lot that is explored, and it feels like when they do flash back to it, you know, their romance is played for laughs. So there's nothing really to dive into by the end of it. There's nothing strange about this way of life. Sorry.
Actually, you bring up that flashback sequence or scene is good, because there is no, in a short, I felt like there was no reason for this flashback. It kind of just tells us, they, as you said, they
Hooked up
in the past. But we already know that from the context of the rest. And those, even if it's only like 2 minutes, those 2 minutes could have been spent in the present on something else.
My argument for why they did put in the scene, I think there's 2 reasons. One is because they wanted to show how happy they were before.
Right.
I don't think that's wholly necessary, but I get why. You want to show how much worse these guys have become. I mean, Sheriff Jake is a complete asshole.
Right.
But he's also kind of in the right. That guy's son killed someone.
Yeah.
The other reason I think they showed it, and this is more of a casting and acting conversation, but I just think they didn't want, Ethan Hawke and Pedro Pascal were not willing to do as much male like performance like in romance with each other. So they got younger, hotter actors to do that and fill that role and give kind of people what like maybe they want.
Did you say hotter than Pedro Pascal?
Yes, I think that both of the men there are more attractive than Pedro Pascal.
Okay, I don't know what I mean. Watch your back, Kevin. I see what you're saying. This is only a speculation, obviously, and I'm not sure how much entirely I buy into that. But what I can say is the script felt weak enough where performers like Pedro Pascal and Ethan Hawke, like, we know that they're good actors. Like, we know that they're
Oh,
good
yeah.
at their job. So it was like when people like that struggled a little bit, because again, I didn't feel like watching it, their relationship did not feel deep. It was just pretty clear that they didn't have any material to work with.
Bringing up their relationship, I think the biggest kind of scene is right after they have sex in the present. Jake is arguing that, hey, you came here not because you love me, but because you just wanted to protect your son. Silva argues that no, it is because of our love and the time that we spent together. Do you buy that? Specifically Silva.
No.
Okay.
No, it was a very manipulative.
It really felt like that to me also, but I also felt like we were supposed to buy that he is still in love with Jake.
I don't know about that.
That's also where the movie loses me, because it's built on their relationship, and if I'm just not buying into their relationship, it's hard for you to enjoy a movie about a romance where you don't care about the central romance.
I think about Brokeback Mountain, and there's a very pivotal scene. It was like the big Oscar scene. It's the I just don't know how to quit you scene, right?
Yeah.
And right in that moment, I feel like Almodovar was trying to channel that scene as the starting point of the film. And it's near impossible to get us to believe it because we can't start there. There's so much build up to it.
Yeah.
I think maybe if they had reversed it and shown more of their love outside of it, even if they weren't young, if Silva was really there for him or not. And I never at one point believed that Silva was there for love. I feel like too much love had been lost at that point. There was just no way to believe it.
No, I agree. Again, it felt like very surface level, their
Yeah.
relationship.
And you also mentioned it felt manipulative.
It did. Comes back 25 years later, leverages whatever remaining feelings Jake probably has for him,
I agree.
and tried to save his son who beat a woman to death. So
Yeah, and I don't think that was explored either. When you are doing something that manipulative, it is also a little bit of an issue of consent at that point.
it is. It definitely is. And again, like, these were all like skimmed over. These are like bigger conversations that were completely skimmed over. Let's say you had to write this film. You have these characters. This is the story you have to tell. You have the limitation of 30 minutes. How would you structure this?
I would definitely the flashback, and I'd even cut a lot of the stuff after. I would try to make it as much happening in just the home as possible.
No, that makes sense a lot. I was also thinking, like, just set it in the home and make it more of a mystery.
Yeah.
Like, he comes in the night, and then, well, obviously he did that, but he comes to his house in the night, and then we're left with Jake to speculate why he was really there, and maybe he has some more inner turmoil is where I would take it. I would remove Pedro Pascal. He comes, he goes, and then we're left with Jake, and then he decides the fate of his son, who's like captured in prison. Maybe we get his decision, maybe we don't, but like we at least get understanding more. I felt like the whole gunfight sequence was
You can lose that.
drawn out.
Would change the crime, because ultimately I don't think it matters, and I would change it to like bank robbery or something. I would probably never show the son. The son has very little dialogue, and I think when he is asked about it, he says something about the woman. And he never even says, I didn't do anything. So I think it's pretty clear that the son was guilty of beating a woman to death. And I don't think that is necessary. What I don't know is how am I going to make Pedro Pascal's presence there not seem manipulative?
I think the key is that he's a bad person. If you look at Pedro Pascal as the protagonist, then his goal is to get his son to escape. But if you look at Jake as the protagonist, then Pedro Pascal is easily the antagonist. I think if I had to rewrite it, I would add one element, which is that I would make it Jake's fault that they got outed in the first place all those years ago. So there's like guilt part to like Jake's side of the relationship. I would also, like Kevin said, start off in prison, and then suddenly Jake is met with his like old lover. But like we don't reveal that this is the Silva's son that's in prison. And then we discover their relationship, whatever, they try to patch things up, and then finally we make the connection.
Also, if Jake doesn't know that that's his son.
That's a good point.
Yeah, what if Silva is just literally coming into the station, I don't know, to pay like the bail or whatever to get his son.
Yeah.
Or like try to argue, and then it's just like, oh shoot, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would have added a lot to it.
I'm sorry, I just had a thought. Like, what if you're like the son in prison, and then
I
you realize
know.
that it's like, hey, Dad, my dad came to bust me out. What is he doing?
I feel like that would have, even in this version of the story, if he didn't
Yeah.
know that it was Silva's son, it would have improved a lot.
I guess that would be one way you could say potentially getting rid of the manipulativeness of it. If Jake doesn't know and if Silva doesn't know that, it's like that is
Yeah.
the sheriff.
That would also be an incredibly sad story because then again they're going to start being pit against each other. What would you say is its most redeeming quality?
Pedro Pascal's ass.
I don't know because I struggled with this one because you know how usually in our episodes we do like what's your favorite scene in the film? And this morning when Rohan came into my office trying to ask me that question, I was just like, I don't know. Like I can't think of a single standout moment.
It's funny to me because I don't think the flashback is necessary, but I probably would say that scene just from a filmmaking point. Like, they make great use of the scenery. I do think the joke at the end is, while it's kind of funny, it's not like, it doesn't really fit in. It is kind of campy. Almodovar stuff can be campy at times, but it felt like this one was more in the serious lane. And I think, I just keep thinking of Brokeback Mountain. Like, there are... And I know that that film is like a feature-length film, but there are so many things I could point to, and there really isn't anything in this that I can say is on par with a scene from that film.
I think at the end of the day, it's just kind of meh. There's not really something great that stands out, but there's very little in it that I'm also like, this is garbage.
I feel like it takes a lot of missteps in the wrong direction, and that's why we kind of end up feeling like a little bit disappointed. Because like, on paper, this should work.
Yeah, I was just funny that you should say that because I was just trying to pull up the script because I was wondering how long that's going to be because your runtime here is 30 minutes, but I'm guessing the script was well over 50 pages. It moved pretty slowly, I thought, for a short.
I guess if I were to choose a favorite thing about this movie, I think conceptually it's interesting.
Right.
I just don't think the execution was there.
Well, if I'm being honest, it just kind of felt like low effort. Like that's just the best way for me to put it. It sucks because it like seems to be a pretty good team. Like all of them are very well established people who clearly care about the craft. Well, I'm sure there's an audience for it somewhere, and some people enjoy watching it. How did it do in the festival run? Do we have any idea?
It was nominated for the Queer Palm for short film, and at Astra, it got nominated for best short film.
And that's it.
And those are big festivals, so
They are big festivals, but like, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but like Cannes is like famously political. It's hard to get in, and like, I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything.
A negative Variety review called the film a glorified fashion commercial for Yves Saint Laurent.
Oh, that's right. That they were one of the producers. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I will. You know what I liked? I liked the way the credits rolled. The style was pretty cool.
I remember that. Yeah.
it's a nice font.
Yeah.
I'm curious. There is discussion over like, straight actors playing like
Yeah.
gay roles. I want to say that obviously part of that discussion comes up on the assumption that the actors are straight, not necessarily knowing. So there's Challengers, which I presume has straight leads. I'm not sure about Josh O'Connor.
I don't know.
Well, let's just like we're not gonna make assumptions.
Yeah.
But go on. Yeah.
Just like with that context, like I feel like they do a really great job at portraying their relationship. I personally don't feel that Pascal and Hawke did a good job at it. I think that they're great actors. I like them in things. I've mainly seen Hawke in things. I've really not seen Pascal in much. But I just didn't find their relationship to be believable. I feel like it's a case by case thing, but I don't think it is the do all end all.
Definitely seen movies where it's a straight actor portraying a gay character. I thought they did a great job. I've also seen when it's been not so good. But yeah, no, I mean, Challengers is a great example. Challengers was great.
I will say that maybe the argument for like straight actors not being able to play non-straight characters, basically, maybe it comes from more from the point of view of it being a bigger social responsibility than anything else. I believe that if a group of people has been discriminated against, then they can demand exclusivity when it comes to inclusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I think that's where a bigger part of that argument comes from.
I agree.
But that being said, yes, case-to-case basis makes the most sense.
I agree. And I mean, We have seen instances of gay actors after having come out,
Yeah.
they either lose roles or they only get offers for roles where the character is gay. Not that gay actors don't portray straight people. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris in How I Met Your Mother being
Jonathan Bailey in Bridgerton. That was heartbreaking, but okay.
and
To learn, like,
he's
Well,
gay.
yeah, well, because please let's not go into this.
you were hoping to
I was, yes.
put on the crown.
Yes, I thought this character loves Indian women anyway. I am one, and I was already imagining a lot of things.
And then just recently there was a story about Matt Bomer being cast as Superman. And we can fact check this, but I believe he literally signed, like, he got the offer. He did get outed to one of the producers, who then pulled the plug.
That's
Yeah.
upsetting.
rough.
That's horrible. I mean, I completely believe it. It would make sense that the story like stayed shut for so many years, but like it's very unfortunate. Point I was trying to make is that I think it's completely okay for people from a community that has been discriminated against to demand exclusivity, because otherwise there won't be inclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, just to add to that a little bit, both Challengers and Strange Way of Life are directed by gay men. It's not necessarily that I think that Pascal and Hawke did a bad job at playing like gay characters, but I do think that they did a bad job at portraying a romance.
I just think that they didn't have chemistry with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if they had even like, I don't know, maybe this was a casting error. Like maybe they should have done more chemistry reads.
Yeah, it could have been, but I think if we're all in agreement that the other stuff in the movie doesn't work, then I think it's a little hard to get good chemistry out of actors when potentially it's not even showing up on the page.
Right, when there's like really no material to work with.
All right, so we do ratings on the script coverage scale. Pass is when we don't think the movie's great. Consider is we think it's decent. And recommend when we genuinely think it's a great movie. This is not an actual recommendation. It's just a rating. So I'm going to throw it to our guests first. What would you rate Strange Way of Life?
I don't think this will be surprising, but I would give it a pass. I didn't feel like the film was bad, but I feel like if someone asked, hey, should I watch this film? I would probably say I didn't like it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a pass for me also. I like you said, there's nothing kind of atrociously bad about it, but it's pretty forgettable in my opinion.
I agree. I was gonna say a pass anyway. It's a 30-minute short, but I don't think it's worth the time spent. Especially because we have so many things that we could be watching at the same time.
Right. With that said, what would you guys recommend?
Strange Way of Life is not a great watch, might not be worth the time it's spent watching it. What is worth your time is the 3rd episode of season 1 of Last of Us. It is also a Pedro Pascal show, but
Though he's barely in that episode.
True, he's not in that episode, but it is the love story between Nick Offerman's character and his partner. It was a heartbreaking episode and an incredible watch. The episode is called Long, Long Time. It's on HBO Max if anyone wants to check it out.
And even if you decide I don't want to watch the rest of The Last of Us, that episode works
By itself, yeah.
You can watch it as a short film.
Yeah, it was a very, very strong romance, for sure.
There's this anime called The Stranger by the Shore. It is basically about two teenage boys that are growing up on an island together, and then they kind of drift apart and reconnect and realize that they love each other. It's like an hour long. It's a bit more like melodramatic, but I feel like the story's a lot more contained, and I feel like it has stronger beats that kind of connect the two characters romantically better than I think this film did.
This movie's called Love, and I actually don't love this movie. Yeah, and by the way, if you Google it, it's spelled...
really love this movie.
If you Google it, it's spelled Loev, not VE. It's an Indian movie about a gay relationship, and just a warning, there's a sexual assault scene in the movie, and the movie is not great, but I think it explores an area where it's like they are not able to be themselves, and this movie was shot prior to 377 being removed.
377 is the section in the Indian Penal Code, which is now has been rebranded as the Bharatiya. Only after that section was homosexuality basically decriminalized in India.
This movie was shot before that was removed, so they actually had to shoot it in secret, which is kind of crazy.
Oh.
I don't think it's a terrible movie, but it's not necessarily... I still thought it was a good watch.
I mean, they clearly put a lot of effort and passion
Yeah.
into it, so it's definitely worth your time.
What have you all been watching lately?
Oh, I was at IFLA this weekend, which is the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles. I watched a beautiful Malayalam film called Undercurrent. This woman is married off into this family and she doesn't love her husband. And he gets a brain tumor and he dies while she has an affair with someone outside. But the day around his death, there is a flood in her town. So there's raising water levels so they can't bury the body. And so now she's stuck in this house with her husband's family, whom she doesn't love, and her very possessive mother-in-law. And the story is about the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law and how they make peace with their relationship. It's gut-wrenching. It was beautiful. I also got to talk to the actress who portrayed a main character in the film. She was great. This movie is worth everyone's time. I think it's coming out on the 3rd of July. If you get a chance to check it out, definitely do.
I recently watched In a Violent Nature. It is a horror film that released on Shudder this year. It is like a Friday the 13th style slasher film from the perspective of the killer.
Oh, that's cool.
It's not necessarily in his POV like Hardcore Henry, but it is the camera will follow the killer throughout different scenes, and it's kind of in the mindset of him. This film is very slow paced. This film is very gory, very disgusting, but there is a lot of practical kills, and I like that because...
You like the practical kills?
Well, practical in the sense the effects, because if the camera is lingering on them, you want it to look more real. If they had more digital enhanced stuff, I think the film wouldn't look as good.
Okay.
That said, it is a slasher film. A character kills people, and then they fight back. That's the film. I don't really... That's kind of what you're gonna go in expecting is what you're gonna get.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching Clipped, it's the Donald Sterling story. If you don't know, Donald Sterling, former owner of the Clippers.
The Clippers is a basketball team.
They're that.
Yeah.
They're that other team in the basement of LA.
It's an LA team?
Yeah, and in that tape he gets caught saying some, and this is a true story, but he gets caught saying some really, really racist shit, and then he is forced to sell the team. This is all a true story, and then you also realize he's just a crazy person in general. I gotta read this quote because this is him talking to a lawyer, and he says, when I'm in a limo, she takes off all her clothes. Limo driver says, "What's going on?" And she started on the way to Mr. Coon's house. And I thank her for making me feel good. The lawyer says, "Sir, the question was, is this your handwriting?" This is a real interaction. And they actually recreate that scene in the show.
Wait, what is this on?
It's on, I'm watching it on Disney Plus.
Okay.
I think technically it's a Hulu show or an FX show. But yeah, if you have Disney Plus and Hulu, then everything appears on Disney Plus, so it's just easier for me to use one app.
That is incredible. Oh my god.
But that's what I've been watching. It's very entertaining, pretty solid.
Okay.
There's a meme in the show, in this person's life, I mean.
Yes.
How patriarchy is a thing, I just... Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Keerthana.
I'm Rohan.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Thank you.